future. Now, having developed a nomadic reputation in the past, English coach Mark Harrison has moved quickly to assure Highlanders fans that he will return to lead the Bulawayo Giants once the coronavirus pandemic is over. The Brit arrived at Boso, where he presided over the Castle Challenge Cup final loss to FC Platinum at the start of the year, with the promise of returning them to their glory days. His stay was cut short after his 2-year contract with the Bulawayo Giants was temporarily suspended owing to the pandemic. Now, to be honest, I really didn't understand why the contract had to be temporarily suspended, Barry, because everyone is sort of like in a holding position. What's the need? If a man needed to return to England, he could simply return to England and come back once the coronavirus pandemic was over, or once conditions had improved. But it looks like he chose to temporarily or to terminate the contract, because once you terminate the contract, that's it, isn't it? Because he's free to actually find employment elsewhere at the moment.
Yeah, it's a bit of a bizarre situation. I don't think it's been handled as well as it could have been. Like you quite rightly point out, there was no need for it to be communicated as a temporary suspension of a contract. Which what does that actually mean? We understand that the challenges came up because of Highlanders quite rightly coming to him and saying, look, they needed to do a salary cut or whatever. Obviously, he's on expat salary, which is possibly in US dollars. We don't know that for a fact, but chances are that's the way that it is. And the club would have come to him and said, look, we need to have a look at this. And that's where they seem to have not found each other. And he opted to then go back to England. But there was no need for a temporary suspension. Just put him on furlough, in inverted commas, and he goes back to England, comes back when he's ready, when the pandemic is over.
Chris, so was it unreasonable for Highlanders to suggest or to ask for Mark Harrison to take a cut in his wages?
Honestly, I don't think so. I think we, in terms of our coaches, in terms of our teams, we always need to remember the economic situation in the country. And to be quite honest, when Mark Harrison took the job, he knew the economic situation at Highlanders. You don't just take a job and sign a contract and you have no idea what this club's finances and what their sponsorship looks like. So I don't think it was unreasonable, but at the same time, as an individual, when you're working for a team, it might not be active duty at the moment, but when you're working for a team and you've made certain financial projections, it might be a little bit awkward for you to then start backtracking on those and change them. So for me, it wasn't unreasonable for the team, but I think for Mark Harrison himself, he might have expected more from the team.
Sean, you've had the opportunity to work with Mark Harrison in terms of you interviewing him and touching base with him post-match or even a pre-match when he was at Harare City, when he was at Caps United. What sort of character have you found him to be in terms of how he relates to the game here in Zimbabwe?
Yeah, I think he kind of has an affinity for the Zimbabwean game. He definitely loves coaching in and around Zimbabwe. He understands the landscape. Maybe it's because of, I don't know, colonial ties between England and Zimbabwe. But he definitely loves to coach in Zimbabwe. He's a person who likes the whole thing of rebuilding, and it seems like he needs a season to rebuild, then another season to do what he actually wants to do. But it's never carried through. It always seems like it's a rebuilding job, and then it ends, and then he finds another club. So that's why he's been described as nomadic. I guess that's where my issue with him is. He seems more of a rebuilding coach, not exactly a coach who actually goes after it and wins things.
Tatenda, you obviously...
Mikey, sorry if I can jump in there. The aspect that Sean brings up about rebuilding, I think is also a function of, I don't think Mark Harrison is a very flexible coach, and we can see it even in the negotiations with the Highlanders. He seems very set in his ways, and he wants things done his way. Highlanders came to him and said, they didn't say they weren't going to pay him anything. They said they were going to pay him, but we need you to take a salary cut. He felt that wasn't good enough for him. He said, keep your money, I'm gone. So you can see that that's possibly where the problems seem to arise in all of the jobs that he has, whether it was in South Africa, whether it was here in Zimbabwe. And that's why he doesn't stay in a job for too long, because he feels for himself that I want things done this way. He'll give you time to sort things out the way that he wants to. If you don't, he's gone.
Old school Brits, Mark Harrison. That's the accusation being leveled by Barry Menandi. A man set in his ways. Now, Tatenda Ziabi, of course, you always have your finger on the pulse of public opinion on social media. And Mark Harrison is a coach who was yet to convince the Highlanders faithful, the Bosa faithful. The jury was still out, and I think his job was made even worse when they got that thumping at the hands of the FC Platinum earlier on this year in the Casalaga Challenge Cup. Now, what do you think Highlanders fans will make of this affair here? Mark Harrison, he's packed his bags, gone to England. You know, how will Highlanders fans be viewing all this?
Okay, well, from my from sort of what I've seen, like online, definitely. I think people definitely have, or Highlanders fans, supporters, should I say, they're a bit disillusioned, perhaps due to the lack of success over a couple of seasons now. And looking at Mark Harrison, what they were just looking for was just a bit of stability. And quite frankly, now that this news has sort of come out now, that's anything but. And I think if you've been on Twitter or Facebook, you know that Highlanders fans, they are by far and large one of the most vocal supporter base. So far, they're just hoping that this just plays out and he's able to come back, because like I did say, they just want stability. And that's why a lot of them initially, when when the initial reports came out that Mark Harrison was going to be the head coach for Highlanders, a lot of there was some talks about will it style match or will it gel, but supporters are seemingly in that space now where they just want winning football. Attractive football perhaps can come a bit later, and with Harrison perhaps now coming out and doing this, it does muddy the waters a little bit. But so far they aren't that worried as of yet. But who knows, if Harrison continues to speak in the media, and if he continues to give out these sort of these sort of statements, that tide could turn, because all it just takes is just the right push to get Highlanders supporters over the edge.
And now there have been a few rumors flying around Bulawayo, around possible new faces that could be seen in the Highlanders dugout once the season resumed. That's if Mark Harrison doesn't return. And one of the suitors is West Ham coach Hassan Oktay. He's a man of Turkish origin. He's got some African experience, coached at Gor Mahia in Kenya. I mean, this is a famous old club. We remember the tussles between Dynamos and Gor Mahia in the 90s and in the 80s. Yep. When these two clubs ruled supreme in Zimbabwe and Kenya, respectively. So he's got a bit of experience on the continent. Barry, who are some of the options that you think that Highlanders should be looking at? And maybe not internationally, but locally. Who do you think could fill in that vacancy? Because if money is a challenge, then I doubt they can pay Oktay, who is supposed to be a coach at the West Ham Academy.
Yeah, okay. Let me start by the last point that you make about money being a problem. I think money was only a problem as a result of the fact that budgets were thrown out by the virtue of the fact that clubs now need to run almost an 18-month season when they had prepared for a 9-month season. So they're trying to stretch the dollar as far as it will go. So there was already, and I understand that Harrison was going to be paid by Highlanders benefactors. So the money is there as soon as football kicks off. So Oktay, yes, is an option. I think he's a good option because he's a winner. He's a proven winner. Last season, led Gor Mahia to the league title, quarterfinals, African Confederations Cup. So he knows how. Other options, look, there's a man in Glenlawn who's out of a job, who's sitting on his keister. He's just come back from South Africa, Norman Mapeza. He's available. Perhaps Islanders should give him a call and see what can happen. And I think Norman Mapeza would actually be a good appointment for Highlanders, because what will happen is that the Highlanders faithful, like Tatenda was pointing out, they're very vocal, but the other thing that Highlanders faithful are is exactly that. They are faithful. The minute you arrive at the club, remember they received Roderick Mutuma, a journeyman of journeymen, with open arms and made him one of their own. So this is a club where if you arrive, you are treated as part of the family. And I think Norman Mapeza might just be an option.
Yeah, and I think Norman Mapeza's stock is very high in Zimbabwean football, despite what people say. There's no group of fans in Zimbabwe who don't want to see Norman Mapeza in the dugout, Chris. I mean, he's got the name, he's got the brand, he's done it as a player. He's one of Zimbabwe's finest players ever. He's done it in Europe, he's done it in national colors. He's also done it as a coach. He did it at Monomotapa. and he's done it at FC Platinum. He went and impressed in South Africa. So the question for me is would Highlanders be able to pull off that move? And, would Norman Mapeza be interested?
Would Norman Mapeza be interested? I think would be more the factor. Another thing to consider is the fact that when he comes into a team, I think he carries a thread of excellence with him. And whatever structures there are in that team, whether it's management, whether it's board, whether it's whatever, everybody needs to come along and do the absolute best, because that's what he demands when he gets to a team. We've known Highlanders for a little while to initially be doing very well, and then there's squabbles and something is happening in the back room, and then there's issues and things fall apart. Is that a system I think Norman Mapeza would want to walk into? I don't think so. And I think because he's someone who demands that level of excellence, I don't think that he and Highlanders would have a great relationship.
Okay, very interesting one there. And he is certainly one of the coaches that we know that is not in a job at the moment. So let's continue this conversation on social media. Tatenda, you did say that we are on YouTube. Of course, people will be able to share this show on YouTube. We're also on Twitter and Facebook, yeah?
Yes, definitely. That's on Facebook. That's at ZiFM Sports. Twitter at ZiFM Sports. And then on YouTube, funnily enough, at just ZiFM Sports. Then you can also be able to check out all the fun things that are happening on with the ZiFM Sports at home. So be sure to check those out, subscribe, and of course share.